Hello and welcome to another edition of Nation, brought to you by Bernama News Channel B and C. Today, hopefully our Muslim viewers out there have done all their Raya preparation, because I think this Friday most of you will be making a beeline back to your hometown or kampong. So we wish you all the best. Don't spend too much, because the spirit of Ramadan says don't spend too much, don't overspend. Today we're going to talk to you about something which is beneficial to most of you out there who are parents. So we're going to talk to you about parenting. In specific is modern parenting. And as the wise men do say, a child is like the moon. They reflect the light in their universe. So they say our children echo our parenting style, be it in their religious beliefs, their parenting style, as well as the outlook of life. So I think for parents out there, take cue or take note of this. How your style will reflect in their values which they carry to their children and their children's children. So with us today, talking about modern parenting, we're blessed to have a very good-looking doctor, name of Dr. Sheldon Shanmugam from Columbia Asia Hospital, Section 13 PJ. Welcome to the Nation, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, before we proceed with modern parenting, how long have you been practicing this? You're a consultant pediatrician with Columbia.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the line?
I've worked as a doctor for the past 12 years now. In total, probably about 15. I've been with Columbia for the past 3 years now. So yeah, in pediatrics for about 10 years.
In
10 years
pediatrics,
now.
yeah? Why pediatrics?
Oh, it's very challenging.
Yeah.
Children can't tell you what's wrong with them. You've got to figure it out. Sometimes the parents are more challenging than the children.
Yeah.
But no, I like kids, and it's nice to see them grow if you're doing a good job. It's very rewarding.
You have a natural inclination towards kids, that you like kids.
Yes.
I think that's the main criteria, or main criterion to be a pediatrician, I think. Okay, talking about modern parenting is a catchword actually, modern parenting, as compared to yesteryear parenting or olden days parenting. And I do feel old when you talk about modern parenting. So what is the main difference between modern parenting and also the yesteryear parenting, if you can enlighten us a bit?
Well, the dynamics are, I would say, even just being parents of yesteryears, I think they were either too busy working, perhaps, and maybe the child was taken care of by grandparents or sometimes even neighbors. Or some parents were, probably one was the main breadwinner, usually the father, and mother would be the main caregiver. But then these days, modern parents both are working, you know, both are very career-minded. They're very busy, both are very busy in their careers, and so they, I think, most of the time would actually have some kind of help, be it a domestic helper, or perhaps even engage services of nursery and daycare and things like that. So in that sense, the dynamics is a little bit different, but also the way they, for example, discipline children, that's also a little bit different compared to before. Modern parenting, I think there's less use of physical
punishment?
Well, punishment, yes, still punishment, but maybe in a different way.
No, non-physical.
Non-physical.
Okay.
And parents are more aware of issues nowadays. You know, you're talking about child behavior, healthy eating. I think parents these days, because there's so much of information, they're more aware about such
Are
issues.
they like punishing their kids less physically because they feel guilty that they're not around to take care of them through the day?
I don't think it's because of that. I think it's just more of the awareness that, you know, there's more to punishment than just the physical. You shouldn't be doing that. There are other ways to tackle it.
I see.
You know, talking to a child, reasoning with them and explaining to them. You know, I think that goes a long way.
I think there's also a difference between modern parenting as practiced by our Western counterparts, as well as, you know, as compared to our Asian counterparts, because I've heard differences, because usually the Western counterparts prefer the talking method, whereas us is like we use the silent method and more towards the meting out the punishment method before. But now, as you say, that the world is getting smaller, the news or the information is trickling faster, they get to know how other people are doing, maybe more effectively, maybe they're taking that at heart. So, okay, talking about there's one book I think we've been given, The Secret to My Modern Parenting.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is by Kao, and this gives a bit of a insight on how to take care. But then again, modern parenting or parenting per se is very subjective. It depends on the parents themselves. There's no right or wrong way of parenting. Am I right or am I not right?
Oh no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, so because there's so much information as well out there, and parents get advice from grandparents, and there's nothing wrong with advice from older generation as well.
Okay.
But it's also a matter of learning from your own child. In fact, it depends also on the child's character. You got to learn from the cues from your own child, and you kind of grow with the child.
Yeah.
So yes, there's no one size fits all way of bringing up a child.
Yeah.
It's a mix of everything, and like you mentioned earlier, even customs. I think it kind of influences you, and religion and all that.
Yeah.
It influences as well parenting.
Okay, so this Secret to My Modern Parenthood is basically a general idea on how to take care of your little ones. It's not really the thing that's etched or is in stone. You put in etched in stone.
Yep.
So basically, what is it all about? Secret to My Modern Parenthood.
Okay, it's actually basically for new parents. Okay, it has some medical information in the book, and for example, like how to feed a baby, techniques on breastfeeding. How to hold a baby, how to burp a baby, all those issues are there. Even common problems, for example, diarrhea, jaundice in a baby. It's also got advice to fathers, how to be supportive during this stressful times of having a new child at home. They of course have, COW has put in some information regarding their products in there. Yeah, so it's parental advice, support.
I think before, if I'm not wrong, the family support from your extended family is more.
Yes,
you get all the tips from your mother, your grandmother, But now, since you are a bit of a nuclear family, not nuclear per se, but you're still a bit farther away from the family. That's why you need to get a bit of information from, I guess, from like this kind of book, and also from friends. But sometimes getting news from friends or information from friends, they can be as different as from night and day from one friend to another. So how do you know what's right and what's wrong to do?
Well, I think, so like same thing, if you read something and you're confused, always, consult a doctor. I'm sure you can ask, your regular pediatrician or even a GP. But yes, there's so much information out there. But I think, like what I mentioned earlier, not one size fits all. So sometimes, you can't be too strict about certain things. And for example, babies, every baby is different. If somebody says, okay, feed your child only strictly every 3 hours, because that's what they did with their child.
That's right.
But here you have a smaller baby who's probably going to get more hungry.
Metabolic rate is faster.
Yeah. So you might need to feed 2 hourly. So you can't be too strict in everything, Yes, get advice, but then again, learn from your child.
It's a gut instinct on if your baby is like crying all the time. Okay, another 10 minutes to go, you might forsake the 10 minutes and give him the food that he or she desires. Okay, so nowadays, like you mentioned that before you had maybe grandparents taking care of children, but nowadays we have this scenario whereby maids are taking care of children. And so I've heard some cases the children are speaking Indonesian rather than Malay. So what, in those kind of cases, what do you say to that,
Well, definitely parents need some help. So yes, a lot of people have, not just the domestic helper, but I would say even sending kids to nursery and to daycare and things like that. I think you still have to be very much involved. You cannot leave it entirely to someone else to take care of your child. If you come back from work, I think you really need to take over care. Find out what's happened during the day, how a baby was doing, whether feeding was okay, were there any problems. If you go to if you send baby to daycare and you pick up, during the evening, it's good to find, have a look at baby, make sure everything is okay, and it's also good for the psychology of a child. I mean, even simple things, for example, changing a diaper. If you spend that time doing that, you actually bond with the child during that time. No matter how small amount of time, you may think it's something very, very menial, but it means a lot.
Okay, I was brought up by parents who feel that less touch, less talk is the best for at that particular time, and I grew up fine. I think so. So what has happened along the way that has come to this level of modern parenting, whereby the father or the mother are asked to have more quality time because they can't spend too much quantity time. They're asked to have the quality time. What have transpired along the way that have this kind of requirements on the parents? Because this is putting pressure on the parents who have to work, for their daily means.
I think it's also, well, one thing I think it's guilt.
Yes, I
That's
agree.
one thing. I think also because of all the issues that you hear, some children have learning difficulties, and it's a very competitive world these days. Everybody knows about autism and learning difficulties and things like that. So even if your child does not have any of that, I think it makes you very much wholesome. You need that quality time with parents, and I think even if it's a normal child, parents tend to do it. They want to be involved because they want to know what's happening. Is my child growing properly? Are they developing properly? Are they interacting well? Because they don't spend all that time. You don't know how they're doing in school, and I think maybe not just guilt. They want to know how a child is growing.
I guess with that we have to break for our regular commercial. But before we go, let's look at what Dr. Shalini is talking about. Because right now, as modern parents, what have you to do to make your child grow into a wholesome person? So with that, we'll see you after this. Welcome back to The Nation, where we are talking about modern parenting, and we are interviewing Dr. Sheldon Shanmugam from Columbia Hospital in PJ, Columbia Asia Hospital in PJ, Section 13. So what actually do you do there as a pediatrician over there? I know parents are looking for pediatricians in KL especially. So if you'd like to, just tell a bit about what basically you do there as a consultant pediatrician.
Okay. I handle babies from newborns right up to teenagers.
Teenagers at what age?
So in Malaysia, technically, we're trained up to handle children up to 18 years of age.
Oh, it's teenager.
But usually the cutoff is at about 12 years old, unless they've got some chronic problems, for example, thalassemias, where they've already been diagnosed much earlier. Then we can actually go on to follow them up until they're about 18 before they're transferred to a physician.
So you are trained to handle thalassemic kind of...
No, that was an example. What I mean is certain, general pediatrics is everything. If there are certain chronic problems, and that was one example, the other thing would be asthma. If it's a poorly controlled asthma, then I can go on to...
18 years old.
To go on to 18 years old.
Yeah, we can never thought of pediatrician handling people over 18 years old, because to me it's got like a young adult. But anyway, getting back to this, talking about modern parenting, as over the break we were talking about difference between the Western counterparts and Malaysian counterparts or Asian counterparts. Because as I was relating to you, maybe the machoism kind of attitude of the man when they see their friends coming and you're holding the child, they refuse to be seen carrying a child for fear that they're seen as less of a man. Is that like being changed slowly right now with our realization that you need a bit of a bonding with your young ones?
I think so, yeah. So I think fathers nowadays are so much more involved. That's what I mentioned before. I think parents of yesteryear, probably father was working all the time. He was a main breadwinner, and there's not much of a bond. Whereas these days, fathers are very much hands-on.
I agree.
Not just taking care of a child, but even for household chores, because both husband and wife are working. There's no choice.
That's right. You have to share the load, But waking up at 3 in the morning is nothing new, I guess, for the modern father. But then again, the question that comes to mind is, if you do this compared to your yesteryear's parents, they have lots of solo time or time for themselves, whereby parents nowadays, the thing about being there for the children, you have no me time for the parent or the parents to be to have their own life together as husband and wife, because their time is spent so much on the kids. Is that going to happen in modern parenting?
I think the important thing is to strike a balance. So, it doesn't mean that because you spend more time with your children and therefore you have less time between, husband and wife. No, I think it doesn't have to be that way. Even, for example, women, so, you know, that 55% are now in the workforce. So a lot of them actually travel a lot now.
55%?
Yes.
What's current statistic, yeah?
Current statistics. So even women nowadays travel a lot because the job demands so. So even, for example, if, you know, mom has to travel, it's a good time for dad to bond with the kids, right? And, you know, when she comes back, they can take over roles. So it's, you know, mom's turn. Or something.
They're too involved there. Yes. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
But then again, if they're both parents are so busy, what will happen to the kids, you know, in this kind of instance? And both parents have their own careers that's going up, you know, I mean, this climaxing and all that. What will happen to the kids under this modern parenting?
Unfortunately, yeah, so they spend a lot more time with their caregivers, you know, that definitely happens more. And because nowadays grandparents are further away and family support is further away, so eventually the caregivers would be actually a maid, you know, or at nursery. So really parents, they need to
strike a balance.
Yes, they definitely need to strike a balance. And probably that's why also parents actually, they opt to start a family later these days. So it allows for career advancement first, and then, you know, perhaps more time with
that
family
too, because sometimes they'll start later because of the economic, you know, they have to be a bit more stable, you know, to take care of someone's daughter. Okay, coming back to the Secret to My Modern Parenthood by Carl. So what is the pertinent things that maybe you can say? You did say something about the things that they need to do medically, maybe for the children, and maybe to the simplest thing as changing diapers. Is there like some emotional quotient here, that something to do with emotional or postpartum depression for the ladies?
I wish there was something on postpartum depression, but it does have a lot of supportive advice for mothers. You know, it tells you get as much rest as you can. That's very important. And how fathers can help during this period.
Relieve some pressure.
Yes, that's very important. I mean, even though mom is full-time breastfeeding, but father can help to do other things, you know, a little bit of household chores, and basically parental advice to support each other. And I think that's very important, especially when you're having postnatal blues or postnatal depression. If you don't have that support with that lack of sleep, it just makes things worse.
Okay, with the simplest thing as breastfeeding and changing diapers, especially breastfeeding for the first-time mother or parent, how hard is that to? Can this book really tell them how to do it? Because I was told that you can breastfeed until 2 years old.
Yes.
But sometimes people don't, because the 2 years old babies sometimes have teeth. Do you recommend that babies with teeth to still breastfeed?
It is a recommendation, actually. And it is a WHO recommendation to actually continue breastfeeding until the age of 2. Unfortunately, I would say in my practice, probably about 30 to 40%, 30% perhaps, only can successfully breastfeed till the age of about 2. Most will probably stop at about age of 1, I would say.
1, yeah?
Yeah, and it's not because, it has nothing to do because of baby having, children having teeth or anything like that, but it's mainly because of work, again.
Yeah,
you know, mom's unable to...
Yeah, but then again, there's, you can always, you know, not really go for the manual kind of breastfeeding. There are other ways of doing, expressing the, and putting in the fridge. How long can milk being expressed stay fresh? Putting in the fridge.
So there are actually various levels. If it's just freshly expressed, you can consume it within an hour. If you deep freeze, you can actually keep it for 6 months.
You can deep freeze it, yeah? 6 months?
Yes, 6 months.
Are you serious? Yeah. Wow. That's how the beauty of, you know, God, you know, putting, you know, milk as the main source of nutrients for the kids. Okay. For the book itself, right now, it's by Carl. And you do have a lot of spaces here that for the father and mother to make some notes. Do you recommend that along the journey with the children, they do make some mental or some jottings for them to have some, maybe some memories or maybe some information that they can take along with them? Is that why you have this? I was looking through it. There are a lot of empty paper. I was like, is it like a publication error or
no?
No, it's just just put there just for the jottings, is it?
For notes and as well as to even write baby's milestones. You know, when was the first time, you know, child smiled or things like that. You can jot that down. A lot of my mothers are they're quite OCD. They'll actually write down, okay, what time was the last feeding, what time's the next feeding, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially when they're breastfeeding, okay, I've expressed like 2 hours ago. What's the next time I should express again?
Does that last, or is it just for the first few weeks?
Yeah, first few weeks, I would say.
So
then the book goes off.
Yeah, the book goes off. Okay. So basically, what are some of the things that you meet during your your practice with all the parents, and what are the frequently asked questions by parents on modern parenting?
New parents?
New parents or old parents like me?
Well, new parents, lots of questions. How many times should a baby pass stools? Whether and they will actually have pictures, or they bring the diaper to show me, like,
Seriously?
is this normal? That's fine, that's what I do. Is my baby jaundiced? Simple questions.
But then
like
again,
that.
jaundice is during the first birth, right? I mean, the first few weeks. Or jaundice can happen after a few months.
Jaundice can happen at any time. Newborns generally tend to have jaundice between 3 to 5 days old. If they are still having jaundice beyond 2 weeks old, that is something known as prolonged jaundice, and that's an entirely different
But it
thing.
can affect your liver and all that. Okay.
Yes, it's mainly due to the liver.
Do you have to put them under the UV lights and all that, even for if they're old?
No, phototherapy is meant for babies less than 2 weeks old.
For the older ones?
Then you need to find out what the cause of the jaundice is and treat based on that, because it can be other things like a urinary tract infection and things like that. So.
Okay, for the old folks, they give you tips. Put your babies under the morning light. Does it work?
So here's the thing. Phototherapy is a very specific wavelength that helps to bring down jaundice fast. Okay, whereas sunlight is it's got a very broad spectrum. So if you put it under the sunlight, you're exposing baby to other things which is not needed. You have UVA, UVB, infrared, and all those other things which are not required. If you are going to put baby under sunlight, perhaps morning sun.
Morning sun.
Not more than half an hour, because you don't want baby to get too dehydrated and things like that. To 10. And never direct. It's always through a window or through a sliding door, perhaps.
Not in a clear field.
No,
putting them on.
certainly not.
Okay. But as I think in the control setting, they will put the mask or a simple eye for the babies. But usually at home we see that they just leave the babies like that, crying with the eyes exposed. That might be the detrimental effect of, listening to the information which are not qualified. Okay, so other things that you happen to meet along the way as in 15 years or in your years of practice as a pediatrician, what the most that you can remember that strikes and you can remember until now?
Encounters with
the patients, or there's some chronic patient. Parents come to you and very upset with you for giving wrong diagnosis or whatever. Do you have those kind of things?
Wow, I wouldn't say a new parent, but actually, so far, no. Thankfully, nothing negative like that has happened before. So far, I think I have all positive memories.
So you're a good pediatrician. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sheldon Shanmugam from Columbia Asia Hospital, from Section 13 PJ, for your insights into especially the secret to my modern parenthood, which is on the COW website. You can have a look at the COW website, and then maybe for you modern parents out there, maybe you can have some tips, and still ask for some tips from your parents. If not, they will feel dejected and left out. So maybe with that, I leave you with the secret to my modern parenthood. We'll see you again next time. I'm Zani Yohi for The Nation. Goodbye.